it's time. It's another one. What am I gonna say? Can anyone stop me? Hi there, everyone. Welcome back to On the Flip Side. My name is Adam Shawwalker, your host, and today we're gonna be checking out this new King Gizzard and the Lizard Wizard album. This one is called Ice, Death, Planets, Lungs, Mushrooms, and Lava. Some of you may have seen my review of their last album, Omnium Gatherum, released back in April. Omnium Gatherum, as a collection of songs, was not an album that I was particularly fond of. And with the benefit of hindsight, there are things about that project that I do like, but with the main core of that album being pretty much every idea that the band had during COVID just being spit out onto one album regardless of quality or consistency, it left me with kind of a bad taste, as to me it felt like you had to kind of sift through like 80 minutes of material that was mostly alright and sometimes forgettable to get like 20 minutes of really great material. And I bring all of that up not to minimize King Gizzard, but to highlight just how much they are able to swing quality-wise from album to album, because as much as I did not really like Omnium Gatherum, I am really enjoying Ice, Death, Planets, Lungs, Mushrooms, and Lava. Like I said before, and like I said in my Omnium Gatherum review, that was a very unfocused project that to me did not feel like it justified its runtime. This new album does not have nearly so much of a hard time holding things together. The ideas presented on this album, even though they are long-winded and at points beaten a little bit too hard, are all very much a cohesive unit. At most points, it really does feel like King Gizzard are doing a cross between like 70s funk and jazz with modern acid jazz acts like Kamasi Washington, especially on the track Lava, which for being the shortest song on the album is by far one of the most captivating and enchanting, with these rhythms that are just fantastic and calm and these swinging melodies that float gently along with some very washed out, very reverb heavy guitars. There's also no shortage of fantastic flute work on this track either, to accompany lines like burning flesh and melting skin, which juxtaposed between these light flutes and frankly uncannily delivered lyrics makes this track feel really heady. And the track does build to a more familiar King Giz jam that sounds like something off of Nonagon Infinity, except with tons of like tom-heavy drum work and flutes just burrowing through this mix. It's like surf rock jazz, which is a combination that I hadn't ever really considered as an option for these guys, but it's here and it's creative and it's incredibly enjoyable. Really, as far as the writing on this album goes, I'd say the majority of what's here is quite good. I don't know if the first track, Mycelium, really catches me as much as some of the other tracks. I like its poppy, bouncy beat and style with these tweaks here and there of these saxophones that cut through the mix as like a nice little garnish. But while I enjoy parts of this song compared to the other tracks, the first song is definitely the lowest point to me on a mostly upwards trajectory that starts here. The first single, Ice 5, which dropped a little while back, initially had me a little bit worried for this album with the 10-minute runtime and the largely unchanging beat. But over time, it's really shown off the competency with which King Gizzard is approaching changing up track dynamics with a more subtle hand. I'm a big fan of these very Stayin' Alive-esque chorus flashes that drop between these very typical but no less catchy verses, which lead into more and more change-ups on the guitars and flutes and saxophones. It's become somewhat of an acquired taste for me, but I do think Ice 5 went from being a track that I thought was indicating just how much this album was going to drag to a really solid display of variety and reach. Magma ups that ante for a more bluesy, surf rock heavy approach. The song as a lead-in to Lava is pretty much one of the best possible song pairings here. I am again loving the dueling flute and guitar in this track, which is done really well. It's almost like they really wanted to do Locomotive Breath by Jethro Tull, but for like a whole album, and this is one of the cooler points for that display. Hell's Itch, as a follow-up for Lava, maintains that surf jazz with a track that I feel can only be described as the purest sound an instrument with a seafoam green finish can make, and it does at points feel like it's committing a similar sin to the Dripping Tap off of Omnium Gatherum, with some moments that feel a little bit long-winded, especially on the front side of this song, but with how much more pleasantly this track is written, with how much more ambitious of a sonic landscape they're putting together here, I find it actually really solid. I do also really enjoy the midpoint of this track, where you've got this guitar solo that starts ripping a bit, and then the flute again starts to go in and out with the guitar. It's very well done. And on top of all of that, I haven't even mentioned the bass work yet, which admittedly isn't doing anything super flashy for this whole project, but holds things down really nicely. Like, the rhythm section for King Gizzard has always been consistent through good or bad, and this is a prime example of just nailing the whole goddamn thing. Iron Lung, right off the jump, swings right into this bebop jazz style that is really tight, and from about the 46-second mark has some of the best vocal work that I've heard from the band. Like, I am loving how the song just builds and builds that jazz rock fusion up and lets it ebb and flow through these unrelenting verses and jam-heavy passages. This whole album is like if Surf's Up by the Beach Boys was a whole lot less depressing depressing and was also put together with like jazz instrumentation in mind on top of the psychedelic watery rock, and that comes through especially on this track. And man, again, the vocals that this track just rip out of the ether on the end of this song especially are just fucking top notch. Like, this track is just killer all the way through, and these soaring lines are just ideal. And I love the way the track ends, like where it again just pulls things back for this reprisal of the first part of the song, but with a more dense mix. It's not anything revolutionary, mind you, but it just reinforces that the writing here is very well put together. Gleezy 710, or Glee's 710, as a final track is a bit of a slow burn with one of the most laid-back intros on the album, but it ends up building up more and more, mostly on the lyrical side of things, into this explosive jazz soloing that I think is really a perfect example of saving the best for last. And they do pace everything out nicely, like waiting just till you start to worry that they're holding out on you, and then they drop these solos that flow one into the next, building and taking away and reworking the whole thing from one instrument to another. It's actually quite surprising to me. I have said before that King Gizzard have been a very hit and miss band for me, but at no point have these hits been so consistent from top to bottom. While I think certain tracks do tend to, at very brief moments, linger on things that I wish would move along a little bit quicker, there are also moments that I feel like this is perhaps the most like realized in vision that this album could possibly be. And on previous albums from King Gizzard, I have felt that there's just been quite a lot of moments where I just didn't really love what I was hearing, and this album has probably the least of those that I've experienced thus far. And there are a couple of things I would have preferred were maybe reined in a little bit, like some of the length off of Hell's Itch, or maybe some things that I wish went on a little bit longer, like the roaring vocals again on Iron Lung. But even still, with the minor issues that I've had with this album, I think it's still fantastic, and as a follow-up to Omnium Gatherum, I can't think of a better album to make me eat my hat. Ice, Death, Planets, Lungs, Mushroom, and Lava is a very well-earned 9. Thank you all so much for watching. Let me know what you thought of this album in the comments below, and remember to like and subscribe. And if you like what I'm doing here, drop a tip in the PayPal and check out my Reverb, my Instagram, and my Depop. Links to those are all in the description below. Thank you all so much again, and we'll see you on the flip side.